The key to success on the field and in your backyard is a comprehensive game plan. So if you're building a fence or a deck this year, trust a Turkstra coach to design, quote, or order the right materials for your project. Visit a Turkstra Lumber near you to learn more.
From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker.
Welcome back to the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker, getting ready for the 2023 Ticat season. Ticats are preparing to go to Winnipeg this Friday, the 9th, 8:30 p.m. kickoff time in Hamilton, that is. Very excited for that broadcast. Coach, I'll start just to thank you. Another season, we're getting back into it here.
No, I appreciate it. This is fun. It gets me away from film and everything else and just talk shop for a little bit. So I'm looking forward to this season.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Took an off season here. Listeners, welcome back to you as well. And thank you for your support. Excited for another year of your insight, Coach. And we'll talk football. We'll talk coaching. We'll talk your team specifically and whatever else comes up. The Coach O Show with Luke Tasker is presented by Turkstra Lumber. Check out the project coaches at Turkstra Lumber. They can help with every part of your home renovation, from designing a deck to ordering a new front door. Learn more at turkstralumber.com. Coach, training camp coming to an end here. What was the most encouraging thing about your team through training camp?
I would just say the effort, the willingness to learn. We have quite a few new faces. It was kind of really came to life when the PA meeting. You know, if you're not a due paying member, you don't vote. And there was a lot of people outside of that room. When they break it up, I know a lot of listeners wouldn't understand it, but basically, unless you're a veteran in the CFL, you're not allowed in a few meetings early on. And I saw how many people were in the hallway and just how many different faces that we had, and it's exciting. There's different energy, there's buy-in, there's new leaders emerging. I could go on and on. That'd be a half hour in itself, but there's just so many takes. But you still don't know your team yet, right? You just know the people that you decided to keep.
Yeah, that's great. It does feel the last two seasons as a Ticat Audio Network analyst, it felt like I was just a part of the team I was looking at. Like the locker room was the same, Right. And this year does feel different. That's interesting that's your impression of it, because it was certainly the same for me when I'm looking at the preseason rosters and as camp sort of progressed. Position groups, the DBs stand out. I mean, it's entirely a new group. What's impressed you about the defensive backs that you brought in?
Just athleticism and whatnot, and that's what you should expect. We've been an experienced group back there, so they're not going to have all the nuances. I mean, we've been really experienced back there for a long time, and change is always tough, right? Because you've let go of not just great players, but great people, and that's tough. There's change. It's inevitable. There's change every year. So I would just say that I've just been impressed with how they've picked up the CFL game quite a bit. And then that's just also a credit to, Rich Leonard and Tunde, Chris Edwards, the veterans that have been around the league. And because they're only going to get up to speed, not just by coaching, but by being coached by their teammates on the field. So the credits to be spread around, but their willingness to absorb it and actually execute it has been pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. Coach, team was back at McMaster for training camp like it has been for many years for the Ticats, but there's sort of a sentiment that I gather that I recognize myself, but that I'm hearing as well, that the game is changing. Training camp is different than it used to be. In your opinion, to your perception, how has training camp morphed in the CFL over the years?
Yeah, I just think the way athletes and the people are trained, just all the way up, is just different. And I kind of laugh, and I kind of say that with a smile, because, I remember hearing the same thing from our coaches, when we played, and, about, man, this is not the same, And yeah, everything's come a long way from playing through concussions that weren't even defined as concussions to even older than that. If you get hurt, rub some dirt on it. And I just think it's even evolved even further. And I think there's positives to it and there's some drawbacks to it. And the positives would be that, athletes are bigger, stronger, and faster than ever. I think we're still figuring out what the right mix is for load on them and that sort of thing. And so there's that fine line between having to be prepared and then overworking people. And I think that's just, we're in the middle of that right now. It's, I think in 5 years we'll have it better figured out. So I think managing that is a little bit different. And then it's just different with, we used to have 2 padded days, so you could plan stuff a little different. But that's just the hand we're dealt. So I'm just speaking of the differences of, 5-7 years ago in camp. So I think there's huge value into just rest, right? And that sort of thing. But our training camps are so short in the CFL, so it's different, in other, training camps in the NCAA or training camps in the NFL where you're afforded more time. And so there's that fine line here where you're playing in 10 days usually, and you're playing a regular season game, within a month anyway, put it like that. So those are just the obvious differences. And so and then when you get banged up, you gotta midstream adjust along the way. So that would say those are the main differences.
Do you have to truncate your install and your game planning, or is it just, this is our playbook and we're going to get it all installed in the time that we have, whatever it takes?
I think you got to get your foundation in, but we knew that going in. I thought the coaches did a fantastic job of, biting the elephant one bite at a time, if you will. What has to go in, but it's not going to happen quickly. Yeah. And I thought that we did a great job of putting stuff on their plate that they like, and it wasn't too much. So, some people need more, but everybody learns at different paces. You know that, Luke. Like what you could absorb is going to be different than what, person X could absorb. And it doesn't make it good or bad. It just means, do you always coach to the lowest common denominator, or do you push the people that need more? Mm-hmm. And then, at the end of the day, it's about winning. And that's the beauty of coaching. That's the fun part of it, is you got to figure out your team every year. And that's the beauty of continuity too. When you do have, Brandon Banks next to you, or Braylon Addison, or Terrence Tolliver, or if you have that Mike Jones, you have the same people, you kind of know where to push it. But when you have new people, you're like, well, wait a minute, maybe that's -2 plays. And in some cases, you can add some more.
Yeah, that's great. Related to the playbook, let's get right into a fan question. We actually already have fan questions being emailed into us. It's part of our show last year. It was a great part of each episode, and you can email your questions for Coach O to gameday@ticats.ca, and each episode will pick a question to ask Coach. So, first week's question, this is from Robert, East End Hamilton. It says, hello, Luke. Hello, Coach. First, a quick thank you to Coach. I met you around 23 years ago at Cable 14. I was a volunteer there, and you waved me over into your group. We talked football and family and how I was enjoying volunteering, so thank you. On and off the field, on the off season, does the staff make the playbook and then bring in key players into the stadium to work on the playbook? The starting lineup in the first preseason game looks sharp. Hope it's a great season.
Well, thank you for that question, Robert. And I'm glad I made a decent impression on you over 20 years ago. That's encouraging. I would say that, yes, I mean, the playbook does evolve each year, depending. But if you have the same coordinator, it remains relatively the same. You're always staying current and adding some fresh things to the playbook. But it gets established in the offseason. It doesn't really affect free agency and acquiring players. Like, you kind of have what we run, and then you more go with the players that are going to fit your offense. But most players can fit in any offense. It's just you can't do the same thing. So I think the plays, for the most part, the foundational stuff, Robert, remain the same. I will say that the fine fixtures and details or the exotic plays are put in for the skill sets of the athletes that are brought in.
What about for the quarterbacks, Coach? Is there more of a one-on-one time in an off season with, say, Tommy, your coordinator, for the quarterbacks in the install?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you get a chance, obviously, when you acquire a quarterback, you're going to want to have conversations with them just to get a jump. Like, there's nothing, relationships are built through communication. and confusion is eliminated with communication. So that's imperative. You've got to have those type of communications early on at the most important position on the field. So I think that it's imperative that they have conversations in the off season.
Robert has one follow-up question so Luke and Coach, do you have tips on a fan watching a football game where if I discussed a game with both of you, you'd say, wow, this person knows the game? I love that question, Robert. Coach, I'll let you take a crack at it.
I think, boy, that's a big statement. I would say that I don't
What's
even know if I would
impress Orlondo Steinauer as he listens to somebody explain the football game.
I think I would be impressed if you talked about the line play and not ball watching plays.
Great answer.
I think that would be, now if you told me that your cousin was playing out there and he's the center, then I'd say, well, that's cheating too, because that's where your eyes are going to go. No, I would say that most people, it's a little bit more difficult because there's moving parts. Oftentimes I've heard it from just the general fan that there's a big pile of people over there. Why don't they just run the other way? Like, I don't understand why they run into this pile of people. Like, why would you do that? Yeah. And, and that's just not understanding the nuances. So I'd say line play, if you wanted me to give you the short-winded answer, would be semi-impressive to me.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing I would say as well is it's not really going to help you in conversation look like a smart person. But what I think is an interesting thing, and that I have taught people to try to look at, because it's fun to enjoy the game this way, is to watch the game and try to every single play, at the very least, say, is it man coverage or is it zone coverage in the defense? And that's sort of a fun thing to do while the game progresses. But if you walk up to Coach O, if you see him after the game and you say, whoa, they were running a lot of man, I don't think you're going to sound so intelligent. But it is fun to do. And you're so right. If you noticed that there was, say, great downfield blocking from wide receivers or great O-line protection, that'd be an impressive. That's a football mind thing to acknowledge. Agreed. Robert, good questions. That's fun stuff. That was Robert from East End of Hamilton. Again, you can send your questions for Coach O for every episode at gameday@ticats.ca. Coach, Bo Levi Mitchell, obviously he's the biggest headline in the theme of the Ticats looking new this year. What stood out to you about Bo through training camp?
Just his poise, his presence. That's it. Like,
what does he do best?
He is. I think he's confident.
Yeah.
I think he's demanding in a positive way. He is real, authentic. Like, the defense is kicking their butt. He's happy to say good job, defense. He's also happy to let them know that they couldn't stop us today. I think he's just something you have to watch. Like, I didn't come with any preconceived notions. I just competed against him, and you don't know the why. You can do all the due diligence and digging you want, but when you're around somebody day to day, it paints a whole different picture. And so I didn't have any preconceived notions except for, just what we were able to dig up and what I've seen in competing against him. Your question was, what stood out the most, and I would just say his being. Just watching him work, right, and not critiquing it, just absorbing it and watching it. And then part of that is watching others respond to it. And that's really, it's often been said, or it's been said before, that, if you think you're leading and nobody's following, you're just taking a walk. So you watch people lead, and if you kind of watch who follows.
Yeah. It seems like the wide receiver crew has sort of bought into Bo and his leadership.
Yeah, I think he puts it on them. So, you either catch it or you don't, Yeah. But I'll tell you this, what I was also impressed with is just the amount of grace he's had. I mean, there's some balls he put right there, and they ended up on the turf. And you watch, that's an adversity response to me, and we're big on that in this organization and in our environment. Is we always talk about how it's guaranteed in life and football. And so rather than focusing on it, let's focus on our response. And, you watch those type of things and the response to it, and you're watching the receiver's response to it. You're watching the team's response to it. Are we really on to the next play, or is that a slogan? What are we doing? Yeah. So I can go on, and I love that stuff because that's how teams are made.
Yeah. Next play mentality. Good stuff. Physically, Bo, to me, that first preseason game against Toronto at home, actually, I think it was his touchdown pass. I for all of the time that I played when he was in Calgary and when we played against him for the years since then, I just feel like one of the things that he does maybe the best in the league is every single ball, he doesn't have an accidental trajectory of a throw. Like, he chooses the flight that he wants on the ball. Like, if you have to put it on the line or if you have to give it some time. And that touchdown throw in the first preseason game, it's just the absolute perfect floating it over the under coverage, that linebacking core, to a crossing player underneath the safety in the half. Like, it's not accidental. It seems like he really has that gift to just put the ball in a perfect flight, because a lot of that's timing too. A different ball flight changes how long the ball's in the air and how the DBs can react to it. I think he might be the best at that.
Yeah, and I think that's might be hard for some people to understand, but I think I can't say it any better than you did. I would say that with all due respect to June Jones and Bo Baldwin and John Huffnagel and Dave Dickinson and Tommy Condell, that's not something you coach. Mm-hmm. You kind of have it, right? Like, it's like trying to coach instincts or trying to coach angles. Well, the angle's different on everybody depending on their speed. Instincts, you kind of have them or you don't. There's not a, hey, today we're going to be instinctive. Like, there's no coaching that. Players have that. And so I'm supporting your comment there that he seems to have that, and not everybody does. Now, other people have other strengths, right? But he has that innate ability to just kind of know where the receiver needs to be and put it up in the air in enough time for them to get to it. Yeah, they may have to take a shot, but it's a catch where if you rifle that ball in that you're talking about, Luke, it just falls incomplete. Yeah. And it's safe. It's safe. It's over the backer. It's there too quick, and we almost get it.
Interesting. Yeah.
And he drops it in where you can do it. Running an inside fade to you is going to be throwing it at a different trajectory than it is to run in it to Brandon Banks. Like, there's no coaching that. You just have to know the personnel and know what trajectory to put on it, how quickly to put it on people.
The quarterback room is a little different this year. I mean, for the past seasons, the Ticats have been synonymous with quarterback controversy or two at a time or whatever, and it's different. Taylor Powell comes in and had an interesting preseason, and of course Matt Schultz is sort of the veteran, second string, and that room, from an outsider's perspective, it seems like a positive group, seems like a cohesive group that can help each other, that's good for the team. What's an insider's perspective on the quarterback room right now?
Great energy. If you get a chance to speak with Powell, as you will, Luke, you're going to find that he's a natural guy. Matt he's the same, and meaning think about it now. Here's a guy who, like any backup, quote unquote, quarterback, wants to start, and he chooses to come back. I mean, this wasn't the only team available to him, knowing he's not the guy. I mean, that talks to a man's character right there, that I'm willing to do whatever, where other teams may have said, hey, we'll let you compete and this was a no. This is your role. We'll see how much time you see. So he brings that level of consistency. And then, but I'm interested to hear their feedback, when you get a chance to get to know them, to ask, because Bo's been in one type of atmosphere for 10 years. Per se, right? So it's just refreshing to walk by. They're not scared to work, and watching them high five one another and stuff. It's not a show.
That's great. Coach, on to Winnipeg in week one. Well, week one is tough, and the funny thing about it is you only get one of them, and then on from there you can get into a regular routine. But what do you know about Winnipeg? What can you know going against a team early in the season?
Well, they're going to be well prepared. Let's just start with that. You're going to know they play hard. You know that it's a loud environment. So you start with the things that you know about their team. They've obviously been to the last 3 Grey Cups. There's going to be a belief system there. That's focusing on them. And then you got to turn your focus on yourself and say, what are we going to do? Yeah, you prepare for your opponent. That's our job. Our job is to help prepare our people, and then their job is to perform. And so I can say that they've got, obviously an all-pro quarterback, and they've got an all-pro receiver. Those are the tangible things. It's just you understand that, you prepare our people for that, and then you say, okay, what is it that we're going to stop it? We like to say who, what, and how. So the who would be, who do we got to stop? The next would be, what do we have to stop? And the how is, how are we going to do it? And so we just kind of remain with that process in mind, and then you go from there. It's unpredictable because you don't know what they're going to do. There's going to be new plays all over the place, and that's why it's important that you focus on yourself and do what you do best also. That's
great. The who, what, and the how, is that a defensive sort of terminology, or is that for the whole team?
Yeah, it's I've always used it on defense, but it's a little bit more generalized with the team. But you're always going to want, as they have an identity, when you have more games, when you can actually watch 3 or 4 games, you start to understand that, okay, then you can get more into it. But early on, you don't know. Yeah, you know that on defense, you better know where 5's at. And on offense, 8's a difference maker, and, Lawler and those guys, right? So those would be the who and the how. So I think it is something that we look at overall, but it is a little bit more specific to the other phases more than a general thing for the whole team.
Cool. Okay, Coach O, coaching philosophy question of the show to end it out here.
All right.
This is my favorite part of the show, when I just get to sort of pick your brain at a higher level and less news and stories, more what is it to be a coach. So, do you focus and do you talk still about into week one about being a champion, or is it a distraction? Do you need to focus and only talk about Winnipeg?
Yeah, there's not much talk about championships or Grey Cup or where it's played outside of early in training camp. Yeah, every now and again, you reference, hey, if you desire to be a champion, you got to act like one. You got to practice like one. But there's not focus on, the talk of it, like showing it every day, showing the Grey Cup every day, or, showing confetti falling. That's not how we choose to do it. It's everybody knows what the North Star is. We know what the end goal is. Is that correct? Okay, let's focus on the process, the stepping stones of getting there. And, as I like to say, Luke, what is it that we want it to look like in November? Okay, and then parts B and C to that are what has to happen and what can't happen. And those are where we're gonna spend our time. Like, what has to happen for that to happen, and then what can't happen. And so you're getting rid of the things that can't happen. And every year your team's different. Sometimes, last year we had challenges with ball security. We didn't get a lot of takeaways or fumbles, where that hasn't been a challenge at all. And so you're trying to pinpoint the why. So we know what has to happen is we got to be better in the turnover battle and the turnover and takeaway battle. And so you put an emphasis on those type of things. But I'd say no, there's very little emphasis on the North Star because everybody just kind of understands that.
Yeah. Well, great stuff, Coach. As always, pleasure chatting with you, and all the best as you and your team finish up the work week for Winnipeg.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke.
Hours of content still to come this week on the Ticats Audio Network. Before kickoff, obviously every week, an hour before, you'll get Bubba and Andy for the pregame. RJ and I will have the call. Have a great week.
A Another episode of the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker is in the books. Let us know your thoughts. Email us at gameday@ticats.ca. Coach O and Luke are back next week to discuss the latest from the locker room. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.